I never thought I would find myself in a situation like this, but here I am, recounting the tale of how I discovered my wife, Lisa, was cheating on me. We had been married for almost 7 years, and I always thought we were a solid couple. I mean, sure, like any relationship, we had our ups and downs, but nothing that I thought was insurmountable. I had a decent job, a nice house in the suburbs, and we even had plans for kids in the next couple of years. But as they say, the calm before the storm can often be deceiving. In the months leading up to my discovery, I noticed Lisa had been acting strangely. She became distant, her phone was always glued to her side, and she would often text late into the night, claiming it was work-related. I convinced myself that she was just under stress from her job at the marketing firm where we both worked. Lisa was ambitious, and I admired that about her. But there were little things that nagged at me. Dinner plans that suddenly got canceled, her late nights at the office that felt more frequent than usual, and that inexplicable smell of cologne on her clothes, which I knew wasn't mine. It all came crashing down one Thursday evening when I got off work early. I had planned to surprise her with her favorite takeout and a movie, but when I arrived home, I was greeted by an empty house. No Lisa, no takeout. I thought maybe she had to work late again, so I sat on the couch, scrolling through my phone, waiting for her to come home. After an hour passed and there was still no sign of her, I started to feel uneasy. Eventually, I decided to check her social media, something I hadn't done in a long time. I found a series of messages on her profile that made my stomach drop. A mutual friend had posted a picture of a night out, and there was Lisa, smiling and drinking wine, with her arm wrapped around none other than my coworker, Mark. They looked too cozy, too intimate for just friends. I immediately felt a surge of anger mixed with confusion. My heart raced as I clicked through more photos, each one more incriminating than the last. They were at a bar, laughing, dancing, and it was evident that there was a connection that went beyond what I had ever considered. The realization hit me like a freight train. Lisa was cheating on me. The moment felt surreal. I could hardly breathe as I scrolled through the images, feeling the anger bubbling up inside of me. How could she do this? How could she betray me with someone I worked with? It felt like a punch to the gut, and I was left reeling. When she finally came home, I was ready. I confronted her in the living room, my voice shaking with a mixture of rage and hurt. She tried to deflect, acting as if I was overreacting. "Oh, come on, Derek. It was just a night out with friends," she said, waving her hand dismissively. But I wasn't having any of it. I laid out the evidence, those pictures, the messages from our mutual friend, everything. Lisa's face went pale and then flushed with anger. She started to throw out excuses, claiming I was being paranoid, that it was just harmless fun. But deep down, I could see the guilt in her eyes. It was infuriating to hear her downplay what she had done. I felt like I was spiraling into a pit of despair. In that moment, I realized that the woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone who could betray me so easily. My heart ached with the weight of betrayal, and the more she tried to twist the narrative, the more I felt my anger turn to sadness. How could I have not seen this before? I needed time to collect my thoughts, to figure out what to do next. The emotional impact of the situation was crushing. One moment I felt like I was drowning in sorrow, and the next pure rage consumed me. I had loved this woman, trusted her, and now I felt like a fool. What I was sure of was that I needed to come up with a plan. I couldn't let this go unanswered. I had to take control of the situation and, more importantly, take control of my life. Little did I know, the corporate world where we both worked would soon become a battleground for my revenge. Part 1 of 6 ends here. The days that followed felt like a blur, a whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. I tried to go through the motions of everyday life, but the reality of Lisa's betrayal consumed my thoughts. My heart felt heavy, and I was perpetually on edge, unable to shake off the anger and humiliation. I was determined to confront the situation head-on, but I also knew I needed to figure out my next steps carefully. After a couple of sleepless nights, the idea of revenge began to take root. It was a dark thought, but in my vulnerable state, it felt like the only way to regain some sense of power. I had always been the type of person who preferred to resolve conflicts with communication and understanding. But this situation was different. I had been wronged and publicly humiliated by someone I had trusted. The thought of Mark laughing behind my back made my blood boil. He was not just my coworker. He was someone who knew how much Lisa and I meant to each other. The betrayal stung double, and I was determined to make my move. As fate would have it, I had just been promoted at work, which meant more responsibility and a new office. I had to shift my mindset from the hurt husband to the ambitious employee who was now in a position of power. With this new promotion, I could not only distance myself from Lisa, but I could also position myself strategically against Mark. I started to devise a plan that would turn the tables on both of them. I began paying close attention to Mark's work habits and his interactions with Lisa. I knew their schedules, their meetings, and the projects they were involved in. My promotion had put me directly above him in the corporate hierarchy, which meant I had the authority to assign him tasks and oversee his projects. It was a strange feeling, knowing that I was now in control. The idea of making him work under me fueled my determination, and I started to relish the thought of watching him squirm. As the weeks passed, I implemented my plan. I began assigning Mark more challenging projects, ones that would stretch him thin and make him realize just how unprepared he was to handle them solo. I made sure to include strict deadlines, knowing that the pressure would mount and that he would struggle. I wanted him to understand what it felt like to be under someone else's thumb, especially someone he had underestimated. Meanwhile, Lisa's behavior became even more erratic. She would come home late, her excuses growing thinner by the day. I could see the guilt etched on her face, but she never admitted to anything. I often caught her sneaking glances at her phone, checking messages from Mark, and I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction. My plan was working, and I was finally gaining a sense of control over the narrative. During this time, I also began networking with other colleagues. I made sure to mention my promotion to anyone who would listen and subtly hinted at Mark's struggles with his new tasks. I wanted to ensure that my coworkers were aware of my new position while simultaneously painting Mark in a less favorable light. The whispers began to circulate, and I could see the shift in how people interacted with both of us. It was a game of chess, and I was determined to come out on top. As I continued to execute my plan, there was a sense of fulfillment that began to replace the sadness. I found myself laughing again, sharing jokes with coworkers, and even considering dating in the future. I was slowly reclaiming my identity, and the thought of revenge fueled my determination to move forward. I knew that what was happening at work wouldn't erase the pain Lisa had caused, but it certainly offered a distraction, one that felt empowering. One afternoon, while reviewing Mark's progress on a particularly challenging project, I noticed he was struggling more than I had anticipated. He was overwhelmed and stressed. I found myself enjoying the sight of him pacing back and forth in the break room, muttering to himself. My heart raced at the thought of how he had betrayed me, and the satisfaction I felt was intoxicating. I was exerting control over a situation that had once felt so helpless. But as much as I tried to drown out the painful thoughts of Lisa, I still had to confront the reality of our situation. I wanted to talk to her about the affair, about what I was doing, but part of me relished the distance that the office chaos was creating between us. I felt like I was living in two worlds, one where I was reclaiming my power at work and another where I was still devastated by my personal life. Despite my growing confidence at work, I couldn't ignore the fact that I still had unresolved feelings for Lisa. I loved her, or at least I used to love her, but I was also beginning to accept that the person I loved might never return. My heart was at war with itself. I needed to confront Lisa about her affair, about the lies, and I needed to do it before I moved any further along this twisted path of revenge. Part 2 of 6 ends here. It was clear that I couldn't keep running away from the emotional fallout of Lisa's betrayal. As satisfying as it was to watch Mark struggle under the weight of his new responsibilities, the reality of my crumbling marriage loomed over me like a dark cloud. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time I wanted to take a different approach. I was tired of her dismissing my feelings, and I needed to lay everything on the table. No more denial, no more excuses. One evening, as I sat at the dining table, I could hear Lisa moving about in the kitchen, the clatter of pots and pans distracting me from my thoughts. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I hoped would be a definitive confrontation. I had already prepared a list of points I wanted to cover, things I thought would break through her defenses. No more half-truths. I was determined to make her face the reality of her actions. When she finally joined me at the table, I could see a flicker of apprehension in her eyes. I had always been the one to foster a sense of warmth between us, but tonight felt different. I had an agenda and I was ready to push back. I started with small talk, trying to ease into the conversation, but I could feel the tension building. It wasn't long before I decided it was now or never. "Lisa," I began, my voice steady but firm, "we need to talk about what happened between you and Mark." At first she acted confused, even dismissive. "Oh, come on, Derek, you're still upset about that." "It was just a silly fling, nothing serious," she said, trying to roll her eyes as if the entire situation was beneath her. But I wasn't going to let her minimize what she had done. "A fling," I replied, my voice rising slightly. "You think I don't see the pictures? You think I don't know what you two were doing behind my back? You've been lying to me, Lisa." I could see her posture stiffen. I struck a nerve. She opened her mouth to respond but hesitated, her defenses crumbling as the reality of my words sank in. "Derek, it wasn't like that. I was feeling lost and Mark was there for me." She stammered, the excuse sounding weaker and weaker the more she spoke. "Was that it? You were feeling lost, so you decided to sleep with him." I shot back. "What about us? What about our marriage? You didn't even consider how I would feel, did you?" At this point, the anger boiled over. I was not just hurt, I was furious. I wanted her to understand the magnitude of her actions, the depths of betrayal I was feeling. "You think this is something I can just forget? I've seen the way you look at him, how he was in our home, sharing your space. You were supposed to be my partner, Lisa. You chose him over me." Her expression shifted from defensive to one of guilt, and I could see that she was finally starting to realize the gravity of what she had done. "I never meant to hurt you," she said weakly, but the sincerity was lacking. It felt more like a rehearsed line than an honest apology. I took a moment to collect my thoughts, my emotions swirling like a storm inside me. "You have to understand, this isn't just about you and Mark. This is about trust, respect, and everything we built together. I can't just act like this didn't happen," I said, my voice steadier now. "You've ripped apart the foundation of our relationship, and I don't know if that can ever be fixed." As the conversation progressed, I could see the cracks in her facade. She started to cry, but I wasn't in a position to feel sympathy. Instead, I felt a sense of resolve building inside me. I was proud of myself for standing my ground, for not letting her manipulate the conversation like before. I had allowed her to sidestep accountability for too long, and I was done. "Look, Lisa, I do know where we go from here," I said, trying to keep my emotions in check. "What I do know is that I need time away from you. I can't keep pretending things are normal. I need to figure out what I want, and that might mean separating for a while." The realization that I might lose her was gut-wrenching, but I had come to accept that I had to prioritize my own mental health and dignity. I was tired of feeling like a victim in my own life. She didn't respond immediately, and for a moment the silence hung heavy between us. Finally, she looked up at me, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Please, Derek, don't do this. We can work through this together," she pleaded, but I could see that desperation was on her face. I shook my head, feeling a mix of sadness and empowerment. "I can't be with someone who doesn't respect me. You need to take a hard look at what you've done and who you've become. If you really want to fix this, you need to start by finding out why you thought this was okay," I replied. With that, I got up from the table and walked away, leaving her sitting there, a mess of tears and regret. I realized that while I didn't know what the future held, I was finally taking control of my life. No more passive acceptance. I would not be a doormat for anyone, not even for the woman I once loved. I spent the night pacing in our bedroom, feeling the weight of my decision. I didn't want to lose her, but I also knew that I couldn't forgive her right away. My heart was still in turmoil, but I felt a sense of clarity that had been missing for weeks. This confrontation had been necessary, a turning point in my emotional journey. I also couldn't ignore the fact that my revenge plan against Mark was still in full swing, and it suddenly felt like the stakes had been raised. This was no longer just about reclaiming my power at work. It was about preserving my dignity and finding a way to move forward, regardless of the outcome with Lisa. Part 3 of 6 ends here. The days following my confrontation with Lisa were a whirlwind of confusion and mixed emotions. I had made the decision to step back from our relationship, but that didn't make it any easier. We still lived under the same roof, and every interaction felt strained and heavy. It was like walking on eggshells. We both knew the elephant in the room was her betrayal, yet neither of us knew how to address it now that I had taken this drastic step. I threw myself into work, using it as an escape from the emotional turmoil at home. I relished my new role, which provided me with an outlet to channel my anger and frustration. Mark's projects continued to spiral out of control under my supervision. He was falling further behind on deadlines, and I made sure to document every misstep. My coworkers were starting to notice the tension between us, and I could feel the whispers behind my back. I was no longer just the sympathetic husband but had become the person in a position of power, the one making decisions that would affect both our careers. One afternoon, during a particularly chaotic meeting, I noticed Mark fidgeting in his seat, clearly overwhelmed. As I spoke about the upcoming projects, I took particular delight in assigning him a new task, one that would require him to work closely with me. Mark, you'll be leading the team for the upcoming presentation, and I expect you to rally the troops, I said, maintaining my professional demeanor while relishing the power I had over him. I could see his face pale at the thought, and it felt like poetic justice. After the meeting, I caught up with a few colleagues, casually discussing the incoming projects and the challenges Mark was facing. I could see the smirks and knowing glances exchanged between them. Word was spreading about Mark's incompetence, and I was the one feeding the narrative. It was satisfying to watch him squirm, but a part of me knew all of this was just a distraction from the real issues in my life. Meanwhile, Lisa was still trying to engage with me, attempting to have conversations about our relationship. I wasn't ready for that yet. I would listen to her half-hearted apologies and emotional pleas, but I remained distant. It was hard to see her as the woman I once loved. Instead, I saw the person who had chosen to betray me. I found myself wondering if this was the woman I had married or if I had been blind to her flaws all along. One night, after another awkward dinner together, Lisa approached me while I was watching TV in the living room. She looked vulnerable, her eyes red from crying. "Derek, can we talk?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Honestly, Lisa, I don't know what else we can say. I'm still hurt and it feels like I'm just going around in circles," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral, though I could feel frustration bubbling to the surface. "I know I messed up. I just want a chance to explain why I did it," she pleaded, her voice softening. I was feeling so lost in my career, and then Mark was there, giving me the attention I thought I needed. I didn't think it would lead to this. "That's the problem, isn't it?" I responded. "You sought comfort from someone else instead of coming to me. You didn't even think about how it would affect our marriage." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I was stupid, Derek. I never meant to hurt you. It was a mistake, and I myself for it." I sighed, feeling the weight of the conversation pressing down on me. "You keep saying it was a mistake, but it was more than that. You made a choice, Lisa. You chose to betray me." The silence that followed felt heavy, and I could see her struggling with the truth of my words. I knew I needed to set boundaries, but it was hard to hold on to the anger when her vulnerability was laid bare before me. "I need time," I finally said, my voice hoarse. "I can't just forgive you right now." She nodded again, defeated. "I'll give you space. I just hope you'll consider working things out someday," she said before walking away, leaving me alone in my thoughts. The next few weeks passed, and while I continued to execute my plan against Mark at work, the emotional toll of my home life weighed heavily on me. I was mostly silent, keeping my feelings buried beneath a facade of indifference. I didn't want to deal with the reality of my crumbling marriage, but I also didn't want to completely shut Lisa out. However, as Mark's performance continued to decline, my feelings of satisfaction began to wane. I realized that while I was enjoying the power trip at work, it wasn't filling the void that Lisa's betrayal had created in my life. I was left with this gnawing emptiness, a desire for closure that I didn't know how to seek. Then one day, I received an unexpected email from HR. It was an invitation to a corporate retreat at a nearby resort, aimed at promoting team building and collaboration. As I read the details, a sudden idea struck me. This retreat would not just be a chance for professional development. It was an opportunity for me to confront Mark and finally have a conversation with Lisa away from the toxicity of our home. I decided to attend, knowing that it could serve as a turning point for both my career and personal life. Mark would be there, and I could give him a taste of the reality he had created. More importantly, it would give me a chance to address the underlying issues with Lisa in a more constructive environment. I wasn't sure what would come of it, but I could sense that something needed to change. As the date approached, I felt a mix of anticipation and dread. I was ready to face Mark, ready to hold him accountable for his choices, but I was also apprehensive about what that meant for my relationship with Lisa. I had spent so much time focusing on revenge that I had almost forgotten about the possibility of healing. Part 4 of 6 ends here. The day of the corporate retreat arrived, and I couldn't shake the sense of unease that settled in my stomach. I packed my bags with a mix of excitement and dread, knowing that this trip could be the catalyst for change in both my personal and professional life. As I drove to the resort, I replayed the various scenarios in my head: how I would confront Mark, what I'd say to Lisa, and how I could keep my emotions in check. I hadn't anticipated that I would have to face both of them in such close quarters. Upon arriving at the resort, I was greeted by a serene environment, complete with lush greenery and the sound of birds chirping. The atmosphere was far removed from the chaos I had been living in. I took a deep breath, hoping that the fresh air would cleanse some of the emotional weight I carried. I quickly checked into my room, unpacked my things, and made my way to the conference area where everyone was gathering. As I entered the room, I noticed Lisa sitting at a table, animatedly chatting with some of our colleagues. I felt a pang in my chest, a reminder of the good times we had shared before everything fell apart. I knew I needed to approach her, but I hesitated. I caught Mark across the room, his posture relaxed, laughing with a group of friends. The easy camaraderie between him and our coworkers only fueled my determination to confront him. After the icebreaker session, I found a moment to pull Lisa aside. "Can we talk?" I said, trying to keep my tone neutral despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. "Of course," she replied, her eyes searching my face for any sign of how I felt. We stepped out into a quieter area, away from the noise of the gathering crowd. "I don't want to drag this out any longer," I started, my heart racing. "There's no point in pretending everything is fine. We both know it is. This retreat could be a chance for us to figure out what we want, but I need to be honest with you." "I agree," she said, looking down at her shoes. "I've been thinking about us a lot, and I realize I need to own up to my mistakes. I've hurt you, and I can't change that, but I want to try to make things right." I felt a flicker of hope at her words, but I wasn't ready to fully embrace it yet. "I need time to process everything. The betrayal still stings, and I'm still figuring things out. But I think it's important we talk about how this affected us. What led you to make those choices?" I replied, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I want to share my thoughts, but I also want to hear yours," she said earnestly. "I can't change what happened, but I want you to know that I'm committed to making things better." Just as I was about to respond, I noticed Mark approaching. My heart sank, and I felt the tension in the air thicken as he entered our conversation. "Hey, Lisa, I've been looking for you," he said, a congenial smile plastered on his face. His demeanor felt almost disingenuous to me, and I could sense the underlying tension in the air. "Mark, we were just talking," Lisa said, glancing between us. I could see her anxiety grow as she realized she was caught in the middle. "Great. I've been wanting to talk to both of you," he said, his smile unwavering. "I thought it would be good for us to clear the air, especially with how things have been at work." I could feel my jaw tighten. This was it, my chance to confront him, to lay everything out on the table. "Oh, really, Mark?" I replied, my voice steady yet laced with bitterness. "What exactly do you want to clear up?" He feigned ignorance, crossing his arms casually. "Look, I know there's been some tension, but I think it's important that we focus on the projects ahead. We're all professionals here, right?" "Professional?" I scoffed. "You think it's professional to sleep with a married woman? You think you can just brush off the consequences of your actions like they don't matter?" Both Lisa and Mark fell silent, and I could see the gears turning in Mark's head as he tried to come up with a response. But I wasn't interested in giving him the opportunity to deflect. I took a step closer, my voice low but firm. "You've crossed a line, and you need to face the reality of what you've done. You're not just affecting my life, you're affecting Lisa, too." Lisa looked between us, her eyes wide with fear. "Derek, please don't," she said softly, but I was too far in now. "Why? Are you worried he might get defensive?" I replied, my anger spilling over. "He should be. He's the one who betrayed not just me, but you as well." Mark finally responded, his bravado faltering slightly. "Listen, I made a mistake. I admit it. But I think we should all focus on moving forward rather than dredging up the past." "Moving forward?" I echoed incredulously. "You think that's possible without addressing the damage you've done? You can't just sweep this under the rug and pretend everything is fine. This is bigger than you, Mark." He opened his mouth to argue, but I could see he was losing his footing. This confrontation was pivotal. I had him cornered. "I want you to understand that I'm done playing nice," I said, leaning in slightly. "You're going to be working directly under me from now on, and you're going to earn back the respect of everyone around you, including mine. No more shortcuts, no more easy outs. You will be held accountable for your actions." As Mark opened his mouth to respond, I turned my back on him, focusing back on Lisa. "I need some space right now," I said, my voice softer. "I'll see you later." With that, I walked away, leaving them both in a state of shock. I felt a mix of relief and energy coursing through me. I had confronted the source of my pain, stood my ground, and taken control of the narrative. But I also understood that the real challenge lay ahead. I still needed to face Lisa, and our unresolved issues would need to be tackled eventually. As the retreat progressed, I found myself reflecting on my conversations with both of them. I had taken a significant step by holding Mark accountable, but I was still grappling with the question of whether I could ever truly forgive Lisa. The road ahead felt uncertain, but I knew one thing: I was no longer just a victim in this story. I was ready to reclaim my life, whatever that might look like. Part 5 of 6 ends here. The following morning, I woke up feeling strangely invigorated. The sun streamed into my hotel room, bathing everything in a warm light. The confrontation with Mark had been a watershed moment for me. I had asserted my authority and taken control of a situation that had spiraled out of my hands. Yet, I knew the hardest part was still ahead. I had to face Lisa again, and I needed to figure out what that meant for us. After breakfast, I went for a walk around the resort grounds, trying to clear my head. I needed to think about what I wanted moving forward. The restorative beauty of the surroundings was a stark contrast to the tumultuous emotions roiling within me. I wasn't naive. I understood that the path to healing would be complicated and painful. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about understanding whether our relationship was worth saving or if the trust had been irrevocably broken. As I strolled, I reflected on our years together, the laughter, the love, the dreams we had shared. I thought about the way she used to look at me, the warmth of her touch, and how I had felt like I could conquer the world with her by my side. But then I remembered the betrayal, the gut-wrenching feeling of discovering that she had sought comfort in someone else. The duality of our relationship, the good and the bad, swirled in my mind, and I knew I had to confront those feelings. After lunch, I found Lisa sitting alone on a bench near a pond, her face drawn and pensive. I approached her slowly, unsure of what I should say. She looked up as I neared, her expression a mix of anxiety and hope. "Derek," she began, but I raised my hand to stop her. I need you to listen, I said, my tone steady but softening. I've done a lot of thinking since yesterday. The truth is, I still love you, but I can't ignore what happened. The trust is gone, and I need to know if you're willing to work to rebuild it. Tears filled her eyes, and she nodded vigorously. I want that too, Derek. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I know I messed up, and I'm so sorry. I can't change the past, but I want you to feel safe with me again. I took a deep breath, trying to gauge how sincere she was. What does that look like for you? How do we start moving forward? She hesitated, clearly struggling to find the right words. I think we need to be brutally honest with each other from now on. I can't keep pretending everything is fine. I need to show you that I'm committed to rebuilding our relationship. I'll cut all ties with Mark, and I'll go to counseling if that's what it takes. I could see genuine remorse in her eyes, but I also knew that saying the right things was only part of the equation. It's going to take more than just words, Lisa. I need to see action. I need to feel like I can trust you again, I replied, my voice firm but not harsh. I understand, she said, wiping away her tears. I know it won't be easy, but I'm ready to start. I want to prove to you that I can be the partner you deserve. As we spoke, I felt a flicker of hope igniting within me. Perhaps she could change, and perhaps I could learn to forgive. I didn't want to give in to the bitterness that had consumed me for so long. Let's take it one step at a time, I suggested. We need to rebuild our foundation, and that's going to take effort from both of us. She nodded, a hopeful smile breaking through her tears. One step at a time, I'm in. The rest of the retreat was a blur of team-building activities and discussions, but my mind was focused on what had transpired between Lisa and me. I felt lighter, as if I had lifted some of the burdens I had been carrying for weeks. Meanwhile, I continued to observe Mark from a distance. I could see that he was struggling with the fallout from our confrontation, and I felt a sense of satisfaction knowing I had put him on the back foot. After the retreat ended, Lisa and I made a commitment to each other. We agreed to attend couples therapy together and to prioritize open communication. I wanted to believe that we could turn the page on this chapter of our lives and rebuild something stronger. Returning home, I was acutely aware of the changes in our dynamic. I took steps to create boundaries, ensuring that Lisa understood the gravity of her choices. We began to spend more quality time together, focusing on what had originally brought us together. I was cautious, but I was willing to allow myself to hope again. As the weeks turned into months, I noticed gradual changes. Lisa was making an effort to be transparent, and I started to feel a semblance of trust returning. Her commitment to change and her willingness to put in the hard work made a difference. It was a long road ahead, but I was willing to walk it with her. I had also learned a lot about myself during this ordeal. I had faced my emotions head-on, and I learned the importance of standing up for myself. The journey toward healing was not just about forgiving Lisa or moving on from Mark. It was about reclaiming my sense of self-worth and ensuring that I would never allow myself to be a victim again. In the end, this experience taught me more than I could have imagined. I learned about love, betrayal, forgiveness, and the complexities of relationships. And while the future remained uncertain, I was determined to approach it with renewed strength and a commitment to honesty, both for myself and for Lisa. Life is rarely a straight path, but I felt ready to navigate the twists and turns, armed with the lessons I had learned and the hope that perhaps, just perhaps, love could be enough to rebuild what was lost. And that was my story, a journey from betrayal to the possibility of redemption, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the complicated nature of love.